was Halloween night, 2019, and I was home alone for the first time on Halloween. My parents had taken a trip to visit family out of state, and my little sister was staying at a friend's house for a sleepover. I wasn't too excited about being alone, but I figured I'd hand out candy to trick-or-treaters and have a quiet night. My parents always went all out for Halloween. Our house was decorated with fake cobwebs, plastic skeletons, and jack-o'-lanterns lining the porch. It started like any other Halloween night. Kids rang the doorbell in waves between 6 and 9 p.m., collecting candy and laughing as they admired the spooky decorations. By 9:30, the street outside was starting to quiet down. The air felt colder, and there was a faint fog rolling in. I'd turned off the porch light, signaling that I was out of candy, and settled into the couch to watch a horror movie on Netflix. The house was silent, except for the sounds of the movie, which felt oddly comforting in the stillness of the night. The doorbell rang around 10 p.m., just as the cinema intensified. I froze. It was far too late for trick-or-treaters. I turned the volume down, listening for footsteps or voices outside. Nothing. The doorbell rang again. My stomach turned. I reluctantly got up and walked to the door, flipping the porch light back on. Through the small peephole, I saw a figure standing on the front porch, their face obscured by a black hooded cloak. I hesitated before opening the door. The figure just stood there, motionless, holding a plastic pumpkin bucket. It looked like an adult, maybe a late-night trick-or-treater. Something about the way they stood made my skin crawl. I cracked the door open slightly, keeping the chain lock on. "Sorry, we're out of candy," I said, trying to sound confident. The figure didn't move, didn't speak. They just tilted their head slightly, as if considering something. I quickly shut the door, locked it, and returned to the living room. My heart was pounding in my chest. I sat down, trying to convince myself it was just some weirdo playing a Halloween prank. But then the doorbell rang again. And again. I muted the TV and stood frozen, listening as the doorbell rang steadily. The sound was relentless, echoing through the quiet house. I grabbed my phone and texted my mom. "Weird person keeps ringing the doorbell. What should I do?" She didn't respond. Suddenly the doorbell stopped. For a moment, I felt relieved. But then, there was a knock on the back door. My heart jumped. I didn't have any reason to go to the back door. The backyard was fenced in, and the street had no gates. Whoever knocked had to enter the house. I grabbed a kitchen knife, my hand trembling as I moved through the hallway toward the back door. I peeked through the kitchen window, but no one was there. The backyard was empty. The knock came again, louder this time. It sounded like it was right behind me. I ran back into the living room, panicking. My phone buzzed. It was my mom. Her text read, "Lock all the doors and stay upstairs. Someone's been knocking at the neighbors' houses too." I darted upstairs and locked myself in my bedroom, my pulse racing. I could still hear knocking, but now it was coming from all directions. On the walls, the windows, the doors. I texted my dad next, praying he'd answer. He responded almost immediately. "Call the police. Stay in your room. Whatever you do, don't open the door." I dialed 911, my voice shaking as I explained what was happening. The dispatcher assured me officers were on their way. I hung up and crouched beside my bed, staring at my door. The knocking had stopped, and everything was eerily quiet again. When the police arrived about 10 minutes later, they found nothing. No one had been seen leaving the property, and there were no signs of forced entry. I was left unsettled, feeling that whoever had been there wasn't gone, just waiting for the right moment to return. It was Halloween night 2021, and 14-year-old Ava dreaded going to bed. It wasn't the sugar rush of candy or the screaming kids wearing Halloween masks late into the evening. It was much worse. Ava had a secret she hadn't shared with anyone, not even her parents. For the past few weeks, she had heard scratching noises from under her bed at night. At first, she thought it was the family cat, Pepper, hiding under the bed. But her heart sank when she called for Pepper, and the cat appeared at the bedroom door, tail flapping. There was something else under the bed. On the surface, Ava tried to act normal. She still went to school, hung out with her friends, and did her homework as usual. But the scratching would begin at night once the lights were out and her parents were asleep. Gentle at first, enough to make her question her sanity. But each night, the noise grew louder and more urgent. Everything under her bed was getting more and more turbulent. Her parents dismissed her fears as either her imagination or the stress of Halloween. After all, she had watched horror movies and read scary stories in anticipation of the holiday. But Ava knew better. This wasn't her imagination. This was real. On Halloween night, the air was frigid for late October, and the moon was low in the sky, casting long shadows through the window. Ava crawled into bed, hoping the scratching would stop tonight. She pulled the covers tight around her, leaving only a tiny gap through which she could peek out the door. She left the hallway light on for comfort. The house was silent, except for the distant hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of settled wood. Ava held her breath, trying to keep calm, but it started again. The distinct sound of nails dragging across the wood floor under her bed. Slowly, methodically, as if something beneath her was waiting for her and waiting for her to look. Ava closed her eyes, praying he would go away. She thought of her parents at the end of the hall and considered running to them. But she knew that wouldn't help. They would tell her to return to bed like they always did. The scratching grew louder and more aggressive. Then came a faint whisper. "Ava." She froze. Her name was spoken in a low, hoarse voice from under her bed. A cold sweat broke out on her forehead. She couldn't move. Her muscles froze in place as terror gripped her heart. "Ava, I see you." The voice was closer now, impossibly close. It seemed to come from beneath the thin mattress she was lying on. The bed creaked as if something heavy had shifted beneath it. Suddenly, the bed shook. It wasn't a small shift, but a violent thud that made the frame tremble. Ava screamed and ran to the other side of the bed, pressing herself against the wall. She could feel her pulse in her ears, her breaths coming out in short, ragged gasps. Then the whispering stopped. For a long moment there was nothing. No sound, no movement, just silence. Ava felt a brief flicker of relief and wondered if he was finally gone, if the worst was over. But deep down, she knew it wasn't true. She could feel it. Whatever was under her bed hadn't disappeared. She looked over the edge of her blankets, shuddering. The light in the hallway was still on, casting a dim light into her bedroom. Everything seemed normal. But then she saw it. A hand. A pale gray hand reached slowly out from under the bed. Its fingers were long and thin, ending in sharp, jagged nails that scraped the ground as they moved. The skin was mottled and bruised, veins visible through the translucent flesh. It inched closer, closer and closer to her ankle. Ava gasped and lifted her legs, pressing her knees to her chest. The hand paused, her fingers trembling as if deciding whether to retreat or continue. Then, before she could react, a second hand appeared. This one even stranger than the first. It had many fingers, curving in unnatural directions as it crawled toward the edge of the bed. Ava's heart pounded in her chest as her whole body trembled with fear. She wanted to scream, to cry for her parents, but her throat was tight, her voice trapped in the back of her mouth. The hands gripped the edge of the bed frame, and slowly, agonizingly slowly, a head emerged. Its eyes were hollow, black holes that seemed to absorb the light around them. The mouth was wide, very wide, stretched across the pale face in a strange smile. Ava scrambled backwards, hitting the wall with a loud thud, her hands clawing at the wallpaper as she tried to escape. But there was nowhere to go. The creature pulled itself onto the bed, its body impossibly long and thin, bones creaking and cracking with each movement. It loomed over her now, its face mere inches from hers. The stench of rotting flesh filled her nostrils as its breath washed over her. The creature's mouth opened wider, wider still, until it seemed like the entire face would split in two. Ava's vision began to blur, the world spinning as panic overtook her. She closed her eyes, bracing for whatever was about to happen. But instead of an attack, there was a soft, guttural whisper. "Come with me." And then, everything went black. The following day, Ava's parents found her bed empty. The room was undisturbed, except for the faint smell of decay lingering in the air. The police searched the house, the neighborhood, and the nearby woods, but Ava was never found. Her disappearance remained a mystery, just another tragic Halloween night, lost to the whispers of the dark. But sometimes, if you stand outside Ava's house late at night, you can still hear the faint scratching beneath the floorboards.